First book of Samuel, chapters 19 to 22 today, and this continues the theme of the escalating tensions between Saul and David. I say between them, it's more a case of David just carry on doing his business and being a decent bloke by all accounts, and Saul just being deeply unpleasant and flip-flopping on whether he's going to try and kill him or not. I say trying to decide whether to kill him or not. This actually opens with Saul ordering Jonathan, his son, to kill David. The problem there, in the previous video we established that Jonathan has this weird thing that he loves David as himself. It says it again in this section. And, well, I mean, whatever that actually means, it seems pretty obvious that it's going to mean Jonathan isn't going to do that. Sure enough, Jonathan declines and argues to Saul for why David should not be harmed and how it would be unjust to do that. Weirdly, Saul seems to sort of pretty quickly agree with this and just say, oh wait, I've changed my mind. It says he won't do it and then vows he won't do that. That vow, however, is worth bearing in mind as we move forward. We're then straight into a very short section where it turns out there's another scrap with the Philistines, which David goes in and kicks butt on, and all is well. Saul has another evil spirit of the Lord descend upon him. Again, that's evil / harmful. The translation seems to be unclear on which that is, but either way, not good, and it's supposedly sent by God. And Saul then again throws another spear at David and again misses. So last time this happened, he missed, and David just didn't seem to acknowledge that maybe this is not cool. This time, however, David does actually realise that when your boss starts throwing pointy sticks at you, it's time to get a new job. So David legs it. Where David legs it to is to Samuel. So wherever Samuel is, David goes there. But it doesn't seem to take very long before Saul figures this out where he's gone and sends some men to go and capture him and bring him back so he can kill him. Oddly, as they get towards David, though, the Spirit of the Lord descends on these men of Saul who've gone to capture David, and they all start prophesying. Unfortunately, no mention of what they're prophesying, but they all seem pretty relaxed and groovy when they get there anyway. Saul's annoyed by this, so he sends some more men to go and capture them, and the same thing happens again. The Spirit of the Lord descends on them, and they start prophesying as well. Still no mention of what they're prophesying. You can then imagine Saul back on his throne, rolling his eyes, and if you need a job doing properly, do it yourself. And he decides he's going to go himself to go and get David. So he goes all the way over there, but then even on him, the Spirit of the Lord descends, and he starts prophesying. Again, no mention of prophesying what. But in his case, he decides he's going to get naked for it. So he's got a proper full-on peace man, kind of prancing around, prophesying something. I feel like this is a key bit in the documenting that would have been useful to know what a king was doing, parading around naked, saying was going to happen in the future. We then have some confusion because we had Saul liking David, then trying to kill David, then friends with David again, then trying to kill him twice, then getting naked and going around being all peace man, all the rest of it. So David and Jonathan are a little bit confused about whether Saul still wants David dead, which I think is understandable given the back and forth here. So they have a chat and they need to work out some sort of plan. So this plan, anyway, that David and Saul come up with has two parts. The first part is they need to find out if the king wants to kill David. So David is in hiding still. Jonathan goes in, and then they're going to just see what happens when David doesn't turn up to work. And if Saul is okay about this, then it's probably all right. And if Saul is not okay with this, then it probably means he wants to kill him. Or he's just annoyed that it's the guy's just not bothered to turn up for work. They have a fake excuse ready for when Saul asks. So it all boils down to the key being how Saul reacts, and they're just going to try and read the temperature of the room, as it were. The second part of the plan is how Jonathan is then going to let David know if it's safe for him to come back or he has to stay in hiding. And the way that he's going to communicate this, which perhaps sort of makes some sense, is Jonathan's going to go and shoot some arrows to one side or the other of a rock, pretending he's doing target practice. He's then going to send some child to go and collect these arrows, but depending on which side of the rock these arrows land, will indicate for David whether it's safe for him to come back or not. Given Jonathan did some quite heroic stuff earlier on, presumably we can rule out an accidental, it might go the wrong side, so it seems this should be reasonably clear. But I like it. I mean, they've got the plan, they know what they're doing, and they go and put it into action. It takes a couple of days before Saul seems to notice that David isn't there. He then asks Jonathan where he is, and Jonathan delivers the fake reason why he's not there. Saul doesn't seem happy at all about this and immediately seems to spot that David and Jonathan are in some sort of league together, even getting to the extent of describing David as, "You son of a perverse and rebellious woman," assuming his wife. In the same sentence, actually, he talks about Jonathan having brought dishonour to the woman who bore him. So it's a little bit contradictory. But is that our first proper biblical insult, I think? Son of a perverse and rebellious woman, apparently, is what passes for name-calling in 3,000 years ago. This goes even worse than expected, though, and Saul throws a spear at his own son, trying to kill him. Misses again. So this guy is not good at killing people with spears. It's probably a good job he's not doing much of the fighting. But anyway, Jonathan figures out that, okay, he's trying to kill me with a spear and I'm his son, so that probably means he's not going to like David coming back. So the code goes out that David is to stay where he is. This is where the weird arrow thing doesn't make a great deal of sense, because he does the arrows and David knows, but then they just meet up anyway. So it's a bit random, but there we go. They have a little conversation. It's established David has to go. They have a little bit of a cry, a little bit of kiss, and off he goes. The little kiss part doesn't seem to have any indication that it's to an extent that would be offensive to Leviticus, so I don't think there's any contradiction there or anything. But anyway, David takes off and he goes to what is now straight in at number 2 on my list of favourite biblical names, the city of Nob. Number 1 just obviously still remains the city of Shittim, because whilst outwardly I may appear a middle-aged man, my sense of humour is in fact 12 years old. On arriving at Nob, David goes to see a priest and then lies to the priest, saying that, "Oh, I've come by myself because I'm meeting my men somewhere else and I had to leave in a hurry, so I don't have my sword, I forgot it. Have you got one here?" The priest obviously doesn't have an armoury lying around in his church. Wouldn't be a church, or his tabernacle, whatever. But does happen to have lying around the sword of Goliath. So David, I think that would seem appropriate, David takes that. And off he goes to the city of Gath. This weird bit in Gath, it seems people recognise him, but David is fearful of the king there, and it's not clear why. But he decides that his fantastic strategy to deal with this is to pretend he's mad. Sort of Rowan Atkinson, Blackadder sort of style. So he goes in there and he starts graffitiing things on city gate walls and dribbling, and the king of Gath decides that, "I don't want to go anywhere near him, thank you very much," and nothing more is said about it. That all seems to be fine. The problem comes when it emerges that when David went to Nob to see the priest, one of Saul's shepherds was there and witnessed this. It seems David did know that was a thing. But this shepherd goes to Saul and tells Saul where David is, and then Saul picks up and goes to Nob to go and speak to this priest. Saul does put to the priest what happened, and the priest gives a perfectly reasonable explanation. But Saul decides, "No, I'm going to kill you and all the other priests of Nob." But none of his officials will do it. So his shepherd, who is shepherd and part-time mass murderer, kills the 85 priests. It's then someone, it's not clear who, puts to death all the men, women, children, cattle, sheep and donkeys of Nob, because one guy helped David when he had a perfectly reasonable-ish excuse for what he was doing. Not quite sure what to do with that. It's not obvious that there's any sort of moral of that story. Saul is just a horrible, horrible person, clearly. It does raise the interesting question, though, if God chose Saul to be the king of Israel, and it's saying that this evil spirit that descends on Saul, which seems to be the thing that makes him moody, it said it comes from God, so God is arguably driving this behaviour. So there's potentially a massive problem there, I think, for the story. Although my impression is that's not actually what's happening. It seems more like, if this is historical, then it's just there's a king who was just a complete arsehole, and he does some terrible things and people ascribe meaning to it through other things. I don't know, we'll have to carry on anyway. This spat between Saul and David continues into the next video, and we'll see if a bit more context will give us more answers.